Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Backyard Tabletop. My name is Jacob. I am here with my very, very good friend.
That's me, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's me. I'm Kurtis.
I just pull like someone else from out of frame. Like this guy. Also
Also Kurtis is here, whatever.
Oh man, it's so good to be back. It's so good to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons again, because this is kind of, up there in I would say in our top 3 favorite things of all time.
Favorite things to talk about, at least, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you are
favorite things of all time is like my wife.
It's nothing else. It's just that's
yeah.
it. It's like, I think I'm with you there. Not your wife, my wife, but I totally get what you're if you are just joining us, me and my good buddy, we sit here and we talk Dungeons and Dragons. Typically, we go over our weekly games, as Kurtis is in a Friday night game and I am in a Saturday morning game. 2 different games that we still like to talk about, still like to keep each other apprised just because of scheduling and stuff. And last time it was me, so we'll be jumping over to Kurtis's story today, see what's going on. I'm going to put these guys on now so I can...
Yeah, probably should do that. Well, if nothing else, just to look perfect. We all know they're not plugged into anything, but
yeah,
it just looks wrong if you're doing a podcast and you don't have, overhead headphones on your head,
That's a very good point. And then also be able to show your mic in frame, I think, is a very important detail as well.
For sure. Yeah. Yep. Well, anyway, before we move into that, I did have a quick question. We do like to talk about D&D a lot, and I was really curious because we both play D&D, we both run D&D quite often, and now we're starting to look into other formats and other games and things like that. I was really something I've been thinking about a lot is like homebrew rules for D&D, and where they come from and why people use them and stuff like that. And what made me start thinking about that was that I've been trying to learn the Pathfinder system a little bit lately. I know you've been looking into it as well.
I have. I've been dabbling.
I've recognized that some of the rules that we use as homebrew rules kind of come from Pathfinder a lot of times.
Yeah.
That just kind of made me think about it, and I was curious, do you have a... I don't know if favorite is the right word, but what do you think is your number one homebrew rule that's if you're playing in a game, you really want to make sure at least this one thing is implemented that's not in the main rules?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I think you're onto something there. I do think that homebrew rules either come from other systems or previous editions of D&D.
Right. Well, I think the reason a lot of people pull stuff from Pathfinder is because Pathfinder took an older version of D&D and kind of made it a little better and kind of perfected it a little bit. So I think that's why people take some rules from it, because it's kind of like getting the best of both worlds,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of one that has been pretty much in my game since the very beginning is the health potion is a bonus action. I think a lot of people use that one. In the rules of 5th edition, it's supposed to be an action.
Yeah.
But it just helps streamline the game. That's one that I've used since day one. But there's definitely a few others. I think they're all being used actually in your game of Curse of Strahd. Flanking being a +2 is one instead of just granting advantage, because I like that one because one, it stacks with advantage.
That one comes straight from Pathfinder, actually.
Yeah, and that was that's actually a very good point. That was something that actually did dawn on me. It was their flanking rules comes from that. It's also not optional in Pathfinder. It's just a thing. Mm-hmm. But so that's one that I like because it it stacks, but it also just feels like instead of just giving the players another, like, advantage just seems a little bit too strong in my opinion when it comes to flanking. Just to be able to get on the other side of an enemy suddenly gives you advantage. For the barbarian doesn't need to use reckless. The rogue can always get sneak attack. It's just one of those things that just gets, maybe not old isn't the correct word, but I like the +2. And then the one that's recently been something that we've done in Curse of Strahd, and it's made the game scary, but also it feels really good, is the critical hit rules that we use.
Yeah. I know there's already another thing called brutal critical, but I call it brutal criticals because the other brutal critical that barbarians get it, I think, right?
Oh, I think half orcs get that, don't they?
Is it a half orc thing? But in any case, what we do for this is essentially, one of the things I hate the most in the world is rolling a natural 20 on an attack and dealing less than your, like, even average damage on an enemy because you roll 2 1s on your damage dice. Instead, what I do is you don't roll 2 dice, you just roll your 1 die like normal, and you just add the full number from the damage dice onto your normal hit. So if you roll a d8 on your damage and you roll a critical, you start with 8 damage, and then you add everything else to that.
Yeah.
Or if you roll a d4, you start with 4. So it automatically gives you a huge boost to your attack. A huge boost.
Rogues just do insane damage. Paladins do insane damage. It just feels good.
Yeah.
And so I like that one a lot. And it's also scary because sometimes when a monster gets a critical hit, that's like 4d8.
Yeah. That's the thing. Is like it's great for you, but it's also dangerous because everybody gets it. It's not just players.
So that's spooky. It is a half orc thing. It's called Savage Attack. When you score a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you get to roll an additional weapon die to the for extra damage to the damage.
And that was a barbarian thing?
It's a half orc trait.
Oh, it's a half orc trait. What the? Then what am I thinking of? Anyway, it doesn't matter. In any case, that's one of my favorite ones that I use for sure. I don't know if it's the one that I would be like, this has to be in everything I do.
That's true because one, it can slow down. What if your players don't necessarily know it? They have to do a little addition for a second and be like, wait, hold on. Okay, I'm a rogue. Okay, that's 24, and now I add my dice. It can. Yeah. So yeah, I get you. Man, that's a great question. While I think about it, do you have an answer?
It's really hard for me to pick because it's also sometimes hard for me to remember what some of my rules are. I think one of the ones that I like most is advantage stacking. So like let's say you get advantage from one thing, because you did something cool on the way you attacked this guy, you've been given advantage. Okay, great. That's really cool. But let's say that, you also had advantage because of this silvery barbs or something, right? It's like, oh, well, now that spell is wasted or the advantage I got from him is wasted, right? Instead, I really like the idea that, yeah, you get advantage from the one thing, but if there's anything else giving you advantage on top of that, it's not pointless. It just gives you a +2 to the final roll.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good
one. Because then it's like you could stack buffs, but also it's like it's not. It feels really bad when 2 people accidentally get you advantage, or just happen to get advantage 2 or 3 different ways in one time, and only one of them actually matters.
Yeah. That's a great one, man. This is literally one of those moments where someone asks you a question, and this is like a question you think about constantly, and then it's like, wow, my mind is completely blank. It's like when someone asks you what your favorite movie is, Suddenly you have no idea what movie
Yep.
is.
Yep.
I will say, since we've both been looking into Pathfinder, there's definitely ones I want to add in the future, and I definitely want to add because Pathfinder just does weapons right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The equipment and the weapons that you get in that game is just really cool. And playing even Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, the video game lately, just all the weapons that you get access to and they all have certain things that are good about them, and all have like weapon traits, which is actually something that's like I started looking into the Star Wars 5e game recently, and that's something that was in those rules. All the like a certain blaster will have a feature, a part of it, and it's something you get if you're proficient with this blaster. That's something that the weapons get in Pathfinder. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, because now there's like a little bit more, like it matters more what weapon you pick. If you are a fighter that wants to specialize in a spear, you get certain things because of that spear,
right?
Versus the barbarian that's focusing on a great axe, because the great axe does some things differently. So that's something I think I would love to dabble in and add a little bit more homebrew wise, if you know.
Yeah, weapon traits are definitely a big thing. The amount of variance that you get in your weapons, and that the thing with Pathfinder is they built the system around like choosing your class and your race is not what makes your character unique. That's what makes your character unique in 5e is your class, your subclass, and your race, right? Those are the only things that you can change that add the variance that make you unique. In Pathfinder, everything else makes you unique. The feats you pick, the weapons you use, all of those decisions are going to change how your character is played and perceived in the world, and what kind of person they are, and how they act, and the different tactics that you need to use.
And this is actually something I've been thinking a little bit about. Pathfinder, in my opinion, basically just kind of figured out, like, instead of a player relying on the role play of the players and the flavor that they want to bring to the game, because you can play a 5th edition game and have 2 fighters in the group, and they could be different fighters in the way they role play their fighters, right?
Right, sure.
But Pathfinder has kind of made it to where, like, so now we're going to give you your flavor to your character sheet as well, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of like almost mechanically figured out how you can go about making your fighter differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, where in D&D it's just flavor, right? You say, I'm going to use this ability, but this is how I use it. It's like, no. In Pathfinder, the flavor is the type of ability you use. Like, whether you're using a tripping attack or a full forced attack with your axe, you can actually do 2 different types of attacks.
Right
there, you don't just have to pretend like you're sweeping the leg. You just sweep the leg. It's very interesting. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm here talking about like this is why Pathfinder's better because of all this stuff.
No,
it's just I'm discovering a new system, and so I'm recognizing the differences and stuff. I still think D&D is gonna be the system I actually play most of the time. I'm not sitting here going, well, Pathfinder's so much better.
Yeah, we're moving over to it. Yeah.
No, I'm not a convert by any means, but
no, I'm kind of in the same. I'm in the same boat at you. It is cool learning a new system and seeing the creativity, and because yes, it is a very, very complex, crunchy game. And I think when it definitely comes to like, we're getting a group of people together and like 2 of them haven't played D&D before, or played a role-playing game, I'm not going to be introducing them to Pathfinder. I'm probably going to be using 5e just because it gets us to the game a little bit quicker, and it gets us to understanding how that works. Yeah. I do kind of almost like this idea of kind of smashing the 2 systems together to kind of make something that is different and unique for your table. I don't know.
So I also wanted to bring up here, I had one of the things I wanted to actually implement as a new homebrew, not really homebrew because technically I'm pulling it straight from Pathfinder, but I really want to use the initiative rules from Pathfinder, because they're very, very interesting. There's not just an initiative skill check.
Yeah.
There is a initiative check that the skill it uses depends entirely on what you're doing when initiative starts.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
In general, this is the general rule for initiative. Generally, you use perception to roll initiative in Pathfinder 2e. And I think the reasoning behind that is like, how aware are you of what's going on, and are you ready to react to it?
Yeah.
Whereas in 5e, it's initiative. It's just a straight dexterity check.
Yeah.
There's no getting proficiency in it or anything like that. You just roll a dex check for your initiative. There's feats that give you bonuses.
Yeah. And jack of all trades, but nothing else really.
So in general, it's like there's no way to gain many bonuses to that or for your initiative to be any better unless you just have a high dexterity.
Yeah.
And it makes dexterity way more important than it really needs to be, especially for some classes. Like if you're a wizard, you want to go first so you can blast the whole room first before anyone gets to scatter. But you can't, because you're almost never going to have a high dex because it's almost worthless to you other than your initiative. Whereas with this, the other half of that rule is the GM might call on you to roll some other type of check. And it says, for instance, if you were trying to avoid notice when initiative was called, you would roll a stealth check as your initiative bonus. Or if you're in the middle of a social encounter and it goes bad, you might roll a deception check or a persuasion check to determine your initiative.
Yeah.
So you actually use your regular skill checks. So if you're a wizard and you're trying to examine the battle, like you tell your DM, well, when we went into initiative, I was trying to examine the battlefield and check where everything is so that I could go into this with an idea in my head and start getting my calculations in for my spells. They might say, okay, then roll an investigation check for your initiative. Or an arcana check for your initiative. If you're like, well, when we started this fight, I'm trying to flip through my spell book and see what I'm going to use first. Okay, roll an arcana check for your initiative roll, right? Like, I love that idea that your initiative can change depending on how you're preparing for this fight.
And something that was really cool, because I remember when I was first got the Pathfinder book, I was going through like that. It's like a demonstration. It's like this person says this and this person says this. It's like almost like a text conversation type of thing. And it was, one of them was making a stealth check who rolled like a 21, and the GM was like, okay, that's going to be your initiative bonus because you were stealthing over here. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So it kind of changes depending on the situation and even how you might be going about it. I love that, because it's one of those things where it also makes sense from a perspective of, just because you don't necessarily have good reflexes or good dex doesn't necessarily mean, you don't necessarily know what's going on around you and can't react.
Well, and something that I love about this is it gives more opportunity for, one of the things I hate in D&D is when it's like, I cast a spell and start a fight, right? Then it's like, all right, everybody roll initiative. And then that person goes last.
Yeah.
Because they're a wizard, and of course they're going to go last, right? Like, if you're the one who initiated the fight, you should at least have a good chance of being up there, right? So in that case, if you're casting a spell to start the fight, roll a spell attack check. Roll your spell modifier as your as your check, right? Like,
yeah.
Or if you're a barbarian and the way you're starting the fight is like, okay, we know there's a bunch of dudes on the other side of the door. What are we gonna do? And the barbarian just goes boom, 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 and breaks through the door. He should be able to add his athletics to the check, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, great. Then he has a high chance of being up top and starting the fight like he did.
That would be a great homebrew rule, actually. Just having it be up to the GM to determine it.
And it doesn't take much to implement. All you have to do is go, okay, well, how's everybody starting this fight? And then everybody tells you, and you go, okay, you roll a dex, you roll a athletics, you roll a arcana,
And it almost could be less rolling, because if you are a rogue already in, hiding or stealthing,
you're already stealth.
You already have that number.
Check. Yeah.
Right? If the barbarian knocks the door down, he's already rolled to smash the door.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
It almost feels like it could kind of speed it up a little bit. I like that.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great idea, Kurtis. Wow.
Yeah, and there was one other one that I was looking at that now at this point I'm having a hard time remembering.
That's
course.
Okay.
It was something to do with the rules about. Oh no! So it was one that a lot of people really have commonly started using is that if you go unconscious and get brought back up, you're wounded. You have some kind of debuff for coming back up. Because there's this thing people have really started not liking about D&D 5e where it's actually optimal to never heal your party unless they go down.
Yeah, that is something that happens,
because you're never going to match the healing. You're never going to match in healing what the enemies are giving out in damage. So you might as well wait till someone goes down and then just bring them back up real quick. But that seems weird and kind of silly. So in Pathfinder, that's not really how it works. In Pathfinder, when you're wounded and dying, they call it, you can be healed and you can be brought back up. But when you are brought back up from a dying state, you have wounds, and they provide certain debuffs.
I would actually be very curious to go look that up, because a homebrew that I was using for actually in the game that we were running, the city campaign, was if you guys went down and were brought back up, you got a point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
So that was something
I don't think it's quite as drastic as exhaustion gets. I think it starts around the same amount of, deterioration, but like exhaustion, you can just straight up die if you get too much of that.
So. Well, yeah. And it definitely, I know people have actually talked about, I think there actually one D&D actually has a different, they're playing with like a different idea for exhaustion, because I think a lot of people were complaining that exhaustion builds really fast. It's like the first point of exhaustion isn't bad. That second one's getting rough, but by third exhaustion, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm done tapping out. I need to go sleep for 48 hours before going adventuring. So I think they were playing that with that. So I would be curious to see how that wound system would be, because I actually remember Dragon Age Origins had that, where like if one of your characters went down, they would come back up with something. Like it would be like
you'd have to heal it with like an actual healing kit.
Yeah, and it was I wish I could remember. It was like, I remember one was like it was like a bruised eye or something like that. So you got like -2 to wisdom checks or something.
There was like a broken finger, broken arm, broken ribs, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the way it works in Pathfinder is, if you've gone down to the dying condition, and then you are revived out of the dying condition, you have one stack of wounded. Every subsequent time you go down and then come back up, you gain a second or third or fourth or whatever stack of wounded. And what that does is, if you have the wounded condition when you're knocked unconscious, you subtract the amount of wounded you are from your saving rolls. So if you have wounded 2 when you're knocked unconscious, you already have 2 failed death saving throws right off the top.
Oof,
so that's kind of how it works. So if you're wounded 3 times, you just die the next time you're knocked out because you auto-failed 3 death saving throws.
Now, I would also be curious because I don't know Pathfinder a whole lot quite yet, obviously. But I would be curious to see about how many spells or buffs that Pathfinder has when it comes to healing. Because, on the flip side of 5e, it's optimal. It's more optimal to wait for someone to go down before bringing them back up, because there really isn't a whole lot of healing spells in D&D. It's like, those earlier levels, it's Healing Word, which is a D4, and then there's Cure Wounds, which is a D8, and that's really about it until you get like, there's Mass Healing Word, which is like a 3rd level spell or something like that, but that's fairly new. I know Withering Bloom is another one, or Boon.
Wither and Bloom.
Wither and Bloom, yeah. That's a new spell that has come out. That's a healing one.
That one was from Curriculum of Chaos, I think.
Yeah. So they're kind of getting to that point where there are more healing spells and more healing options. I know there's a lot of cleric stuff that's really helping with that, like the actually the one of the warlock the Celestial Warlock, I believe, has like a pool they can pull from, which is like some healing stuff, which is cool.
Yep. I'm actually currently building a character based around the Celestial Warlock, because next campaign I run, I want to be the designated healer and stuff. And when I look at cleric, I'm just like, like the life cleric is pretty good, and it gives you bonuses to your healing spells. But that's it. It doesn't give you like a generic form of a way to heal people.
Yeah. Other than, well, their Channel Divinity, I think, is like a pool thing, right?
Yeah, but that's like 25 hit points once a day at that main level, and as you go up, it's more hit points, but it's like once a day. Like it's a good heal for one dude one time, but it's not like the best.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So, I think I love that homebrew idea of doing that. I feel like if I had a group where healing was more available to them, or health potions was a little bit more available to them, I think I would be on that line of like, okay, I'm going to make going down a little bit harder for you guys. So maybe you use those abilities rather than just bringing something back up, versus a party that is a bunch of, fighters and wizards and warlocks. And it may not be,
And it also depends on the feel of the story you're playing, right? Like in Curse of Strahd, I think I would definitely implement this if I was starting it again from the top. I would definitely make this a thing, like the wounded feature and stuff. It just makes sense. It makes it feel more dangerous and more hopeless, right? Like that's the point.
That would even be an interesting idea for like, almost like in certain areas of a map, you make death a little bit hit harder. Like if there's a haunting or something, there's like a haunted place that you go to, or like the wastes. There's a lot of like, in my world, I think I called this area neglected because it was like a cursed land. So I think every fantasy place has like some place that's cursed. That would be kind of cool when the players enter there. Well, you have death hit a little bit harder, like almost like the place is trying to.
I actually saw one the other day, and gosh, it was on TikTok. I cannot remember which guy it was on TikTok, so I'm sorry, but their whole thing was like, there's this dungeon that's like plagued by a necromancer, and it like seeps away at your life force, and so when the dungeon starts, however many hit dice everybody has left is what they have, and every time you go down to 0 hit points, one of your hit dice is automatically used to get you back up.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But if you run out of hit dice and you go down, you immediately turn to ashes and you're dead.
Oof. You just get hit with the disintegration spell.
You just disintegrate. So like if you run out of hit dice, you're screwed, kind of a thing. And it's like,
Oof.
He was like, you can even implement like, this door requires a toll of 2 hit dice. Doesn't matter who it's from. It can be from multiple people. But to get through, you have to provide some of your life essence to get through it, kind of a thing. I was like, oh, that's a really cool, like, lich dungeon. That would be really fun.
That's interesting. That is kind of cool, and I would love a little bit more implementation of the hit dice in that way, because it's almost like it is supposed to be like, quote unquote, like some sort of reserve that your character has, right? And eventually they're going to run out of it. Yeah. And it does get to the point of like when you're level 10, 12, 14, you know, you really aren't going to be using all of them. Unless you're like a barbarian and you rolled really low or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. The couple times that we've played that high, there were only maybe a handful of times that I remember using a lot of hit dice. So it would be kind of cool to implement it more.
There were plenty of times I remember not ever being at full hit dice for like 12 sessions, but never when I felt worried about not having any hit dice
running out. Yeah.
But the reason for that was only because you only get half of them back on a long rest, right? So it's pretty difficult to get back to full if you're consistently using your hit dice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think this would be a very cool idea of just going through and be like, what rules would be cool for us to pull and grab from? Because I am a huge believer in, you know, your table, you get to do your rules. And I know not everyone is like that. I don't know if everyone would be on that line of like taking your favorite rules and mashing them together. It's like, no, when you play Pathfinder, you play Pathfinder. When you play 5e, you play 5e. But yeah, I don't know. I like changing it up, making things a little bit more quote unquote realistic.
Well, and also just tuning the game to you and your group, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe your group isn't a fan of how weird it seems to, or how difficult it seems to take potions, or like your group really hates it when they roll that 1 on their crit. Like, just figure out what you can implement. Like what I did for Curse of Strahd was like, here's all my rules. We'll try them out for a few sessions. If any of these come up and you guys are like, wow, that seems not good, then let's go over it and maybe we'll get rid of it. Like,
yeah,
if it doesn't fit for the group, then we'll change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And you know, there is also something to be said. Not everyone wants to learn a completely new system, right? And in that case, then you just start slowly converting them to a new system. And by the end of the long-term 2-year campaign, you're in a new system at that point.
Yeah, by the end of it, you're like, well, thanks for playing my Pathfinder game. And everyone's like, what? I thought we were playing D&D. And it was like, oh, you didn't notice? We've been slowly shifting all of the rules over to Pathfinder for the last 2.5 years.
They look down at their character sheet and they're like, what? That would be, man, if anyone can pull that off, I would love to hear about it. Dang, that would be awesome. Oh, man. Well, great question, Kurtis.
Speaking of implementing new and interesting things into your games.
Yeah.
So I think it's my turn to talk about my game this week.
It is, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited to hear what's been going on.
So we're gonna talk about the chase scene that we went through in my game this 2 weeks ago now, but we'll go over this last week too. So where we last left off, I believe we had just finished our whole ordeal and had gone through some free time, and then I think I ended it by teasing that some rumors had been starting in the city about them finding the king's killer. Is that right?
Yes. There is some conspiracies going on, I believe, is what I remember. People are trying to uncover what really is going on. Because I don't know. I remember you saying you had theories,
Yes.
but you did not know who the villain is. You guys really have no idea, and you're helping the queen.
I'm really starting to lean towards the queen's not great. By this point, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Essentially, last I left off here, we were in our downtime, and during that downtime, we were starting to hear a lot of talk in the city that apparently it was now known who killed the king. A lot of people suspected the queen, thinking that she poisoned him just so she could get the rule, all this kind of stuff. Right. Now there's this rumor going around the city that the person who killed the king was an artist that had come in to paint the king's portrait for his birthday. And now basically what happened was a guard, a royal palace guard, came forward after being interrogated and after not being able to live with the guilt, essentially, came forward and said, I let this person in. I knew what they intended to do, and I did nothing about it because I got paid really well.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
This person is a fairly young woman who was a new up-and-coming artist that the king had commissioned to do a new portrait of him because his birthday was coming up. And I think when we started the campaign, it was like the day before the king's birthday or something. He died like either on or right after or right before his birthday, which is like a holiday in the city. And so she was brought in to do a portrait for him. And basically what this guard said was she poisoned the drink that he was drinking while she was doing his portrait.
Okay.
And so once she finished the painting, she left. The poison took its effect shortly after, and the king passed away. And this information was just now starting to slowly leak into the city.
Now, I am curious. How did Dip go about portraying that? Did he just, in that 5-day downtime, you guys start hearing these things? Or did one of you guys...
I kind of gave him an in because what my character likes to do on their off time is take walks in the city and through the markets and just listen. Just try and feel how the city is feeling because it's been in such disarray. He's trying to keep his ear to because he's real smart. He's real worried about the city. He's worried about things. His whole thing is trying to keep his ear to the ground and feel how the city is feeling. Kind of get the feel for like whether things are dying down, whether things are acting up, whether more things are coming up and stuff. And so I rolled, basically, it was like an investigation check or an insight check. And he gave me that information.
Okay. So it's something that you kind of collected over a period of days type of thing. Okay.
And then, eventually it became so big, like everybody was talking about it. And so at that point it was pretty obvious, but I gained that information a little bit early, I think.
It would be kind of cool if your character almost starts getting a little group of informants, right? Kind of like the I know a guy situation.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I like it.
I think technically because of my background, I can do stuff like that. But in any case, so that rumor had started going around that they know who the person is and now they just need to catch her.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, after these rumors have started, now it's getting big. Everyone in the city's talking about it, and we're asked to come into the guard post again. Cressida Croft is there. She brings us in. She's the big honcho with the guards, all that kind of stuff. She says, she basically gives us the lowdown. She says, I'm sure by now you guys have heard about this whole thing. They think they know who did it. And she goes, here's what I'm worried about. This person needs to be properly interrogated and have their guilt properly found, whether it is true or not, by the by the courts. Like, it
courts,
actually needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know that she actually did it. And she's like, what I'm afraid of right now is because the city is in such uproar, they're going to find her and there's just going to be a lynching. She's not going to get the chance to have her innocence or guilt proven.
Okay. Okay.
So she's like, here's the deal. I've got some info that I have not let out yet. I know where she is. I want you guys to show up there first and get her and bring her to me directly. Do not give her to any other guards. Don't give her to anybody else. I need you to bring her here.
Now, this is kind of huge right now.
It
like
is.
putting a lot of, like, you guys would be able to do so much with this. Yep. I love it.
So her whole thing was like, I'm not really for the queen, you know, I'm for the city.
Right.
The queen has told me what to do. I'm thinking it seems a little fishy. I want to find out what's actually happening. I want her to be interrogated by people I trust and I know aren't going to just mess around with it before anything actually happens to her. She's like, I haven't let this information out because there are plenty of guardsmen here who are just wanting to do their job for the queen and get it done. And they'll do whatever they want.
Okay.
Also, there's these things called death knights around the city. And they're basically paladins of these orders that are incredibly lawful and incredibly...
Do you mean Hell Knights, or is it
Hell
something
Knights.
different?
Yes, sorry, Hell Knights,
okay.
not Death Knights.
I just want to make sure. Yeah, Hell Knights. They're crazy.
They're paladins of these orders that are super, super, super lawful and super direct under the law that they use, and it's always lawful, but it's not usually good. A lot of times it's neutral, but sometimes it's evil.
I think actually majority of the time it's evil. Yeah. Now, it could be different depending on the area.
There's even some that are completely atheistic orders. They're not towards any of the gods or anything. They're just Hell Knights, and they're just people that they just have this law that they follow to a T. There's one Hell Knight order that actually does follow. They don't follow any one god. They follow these 5 gods, and they only distill all of their most lawful tenets down into one tenant form that they follow to the T.
That's interesting. Yeah. Hell Knights are pretty cool. Yeah.
Really cool order. But the order here is called the Order of the Nail, and they're essentially mercenaries. Like, their lawful tenant is essentially their whole thing is society needs to remain lawful. Essentially, their whole thing is like keeping societies above the ground. Don't let things deteriorate into animalhood, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we're people, we're above that. We need to keep things lawful and societal. But the thing about them is, really anyone can get their services as long as it attains to their law, and they'll do, so. Technically, right now, they're not necessarily working for anybody, but their whole thing is like, yeah, if this person killed the king, they deserve to die because the king is what holds up the society here. So we'll find her.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So they're also on the lookout for her. So our whole goal is like, don't let anybody know about this. You go get her before anybody else. I'm going to give you this information. Don't let anybody else know it. So she basically gives us her address and tasks us with going and getting her before anybody else does. She's like, now in like an hour and a half, I'm going to give my whole thing and basically say, this is where she is. Let's go get her. So that's about, you don't have a ton of time. Like, you've got some time to get her before the rest of the guard gets there or this information reaches anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, if I found this out, then other people have too. So.
Okay.
The other thing she mentions is that the queen is not happy with how the I did this last time too. The group of guards that like fly the hippogriffs over the city.
Oh, right. Right, right.
She's not happy with how they've been doing lately, and so she's going to disavow them all. She's going to get rid of that whole order.
Ooh. Now,
and instead of them, she's going to bring in her own personal set of people, her own personal guard to take over their position. When I heard that, I was like, oh, so this is a coup. Okay, great. Sounds good. All right, now I know what's going on. It's like, oh yeah, the very first thing you do, absolutely, when you're trying to seize power, is get rid of the only, like not mercenary, but the only like military group that isn't completely faithful to the throne. Get rid of them, and then bring in your own people, right?
Oh dear, yeah.
Like that's exactly what Palpatine did. He's like, the Jedi are the only thing that are keeping me. I'll get rid of them. Yeah, then I'm free to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, from also just a logical point of view, I'm like, she could spin it in a way of like, no, I'm doing this because I need to make sure that, like, yes, I am innocent, but I need to make sure that I'm safe. So what I need to do is reform the guard because all of them were loyal to the king. I need people that are loyal to me. The king isn't here anymore. Well, I could see that also being a thing. It's kind of cool.
What's also really crazy is technically that group of guards, that military force, the one person they answer to is the housecarl of the castle. I think I said that last time, right?
I think so.
Now, the way their order works is if that housecarl dies, basically the commander of the whole group becomes the new housecarl of the castle, right? And then takes over the lead. Now, the interesting thing is that housecarl has been missing since the day the king died. He has not been announced dead, so nobody can take his place, but he's missing, so they don't have any leadership. They can't do anything. They don't have any way to do anything. So it's like they've been held in this limbo for a while, and it's like, yeah, if he was pronounced dead and they could get a new person in power, they could fight this, but they can't right now because there's nobody in power because he hasn't been announced dead. So I'm like, oh,
that's smart.
Oh, okay. Dots are connecting. Yep, I get it. Okay, all right. Queen's bad. All right. Okay, here we go. That's how I'm feeling. That's how my character is feeling right now. I don't know about anyone else or if it's all true yet, but those are my theories.
If you ever do one more commission, just, if you have some extra money lying around and get one more commission, you should totally get your character's art done in that meme of the guy that's pointing at the
Pepe
threads
Sylvia.
on the
there
wall.
There is no Pepe Sylvia. He doesn't exist. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I've literally I've said that his room is very, very, very tidy except for his bed, which he never makes, and a big bunch of stuff on the wall where he's literally connecting dots with lines on the wall. He's actually incredible. Putting stuff together. Anyway, so she tells us, go get this person, bring them back here, don't hurt them, don't do anything. We just need to prove if they did it or they didn't do it. Because if the city or the Hell Knights get a hold of her before you guys do, there's going to be a lynching and we'll never know.
Yeah.
We head off that direction. On the way, my character brings something up. Cal looks at the rest of the party and he goes, I know we've been told to do this, but let's think about it for a second. What is going to get this city back to health faster? Is this person being lynched all the city needs to go back to normal and for people to think, okay, justice has been done. Everything's good now. We're all fine. Is that all they need? Because if so,
oh boy.
Cal's like, I'm kind of okay with sacrificing one innocent person so we don't run into civil war in 3 months.
Okay.
And the rest of the party's like, absolutely not. No, never. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. And he's like, okay. Especially our cleric, who's, played by my wonderful wife, was like, what? Like, I'm sorry. I'm not letting an innocent person die just because it's gonna bring a better outcome for the city. Like, and Cal's like,
no.
the many outweigh the one, right? Like,
the greater good.
Like, what if this one person dying right now in unjustly prevents hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people from dying 3 months from now when the city goes into all-out war because everyone's still unhappy, right? Like, maybe that's better. Nobody's okay with it. He goes, all right, well, whatever. We keep going. Because at this point, he's not like for the queen by any means. At this point, he's pretty convinced she's the one doing all of this. She's trying to seize power, all of that kind of stuff.
He's starting to make the, like, oh man, this is probably how I would do it type of thing.
Right. But he doesn't care about that. He's like, whoever's in power is going to be in power. Like, it doesn't matter if they did it the wrong way. Like, but yeah, maybe she doesn't deserve to be there. But that doesn't mean half the city has to die to get her out of her throne, right? Like, okay, we'll just deal with it. Like, don't let the little guy suffer because she decided she needs to be on the throne. That's his whole thing. Cal's whole thing is always watching out for the little guy in the city. Like, he's like, I love this city. I love the people in it. The people are what matters. Who cares what they're doing up there in their palaces? Keep these people from dying. That's what matters.
Yeah. So is Cal's like whole worldview actually very similar to the person that they're working for? The person that told, because she's not really for the queen, she's for the city. She's incredible.
Well, so the thing they care about is the same. They both care about the city over the royalty. But
right. Cal was definitely willing to kill this person versus she who was like, no, I want to figure out if she's actually to blame type of thing.
She is still like 100% lawful. So her perspective is justice needs to be done.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if it's the queen's justice. It's not the queen's justice. It's real justice that needs to be done.
Okay.
So we need to find this person before anyone else does to prove the guilt, not have it be a kangaroo court. Whereas Cal's thing is like, justice is decided by the people who rule the city.
Yeah.
Justice doesn't matter. Law doesn't matter. The laws are made. What is it? Brennan Lee Mulligan said in his thing. Laws are just threats put in by the people who rule a particular city in order to keep the other people in line. It's like, that's Cal's whole perspective. He's chaotic neutral, right? Mm-hmm. So his whole thing is like personal freedoms are the biggest thing. Like, it's not his job to make sure every single person gets the justice they deserve. It's his job to make sure that the most people don't have to worry about whether they're going to die that night. Like, yeah, that's what's more important.
I think that's a great point. It's like the people up there in their castles, they have no idea what's going on down here.
Yeah.
And I want to look out for the people that are down here. Yeah.
Yeah. The needs, and for him, it's definitely the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah.
If something is going to make the city run a lot better and help the people here a lot more, and one or two people have to suffer for it, that's a no-brainer. They should absolutely suffer for it. To Cal, that's his whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if I have to die to make sure 100 people live, kill me. Great.
Oof.
Totally worth it.
Wow.
Like that's his deal.
All right. All right. Well, hardcore beliefs.
We head to this girl's apartment. And on the ground floor, we're met by a nice elderly couple. And they're like, "Oh, are you like we don't recognize you a lot. There's a lot of you here. What are you here to do?" And Cal's like, "Oh, we're just here to meet our friend. Don't worry about it." And then our bard comes in to see if he can get some info, and he's like, "Yeah, we're here meeting a blonde woman. Do you know her?" And immediately they're both like, "No one here by that description really that I can think of."
Uh-oh.
And we're like, "Okay." And so we start heading in, and immediately the older woman was like sweeping the ground, right? And she reaches down to grab the bucket and kind of trips and knocks the bucket over.
Okay.
And Cal goes and like goes and like looks back like, "Wait." And I asked the DM, I was like, "Was that on purpose?" And he has me roll an insight check, and I got really good. I think I rolled in the 20s, and he messages me and says, "Absolutely, it was on purpose." And so I step back out there while everyone else is continuing up through the complex, and I go talk to her, and I'm like, "Hey, look, I know what you just did, and I know you're probably trying to protect this person that we're looking for. I can promise you we're the best chance of her getting out of here alive and being okay." And I rolled really good on my persuasion check too. And she was like, "Okay, I don't know much about her. We all really like her here in the building, and we don't agree with all of these things that people have been saying about her. So we're doing our best just to help her and protect her. She told me to give her a signal if people come up looking for her, and that's what I did." And I was like, "Is there any way you can reverse it? Tell her everything's actually all okay?" And she's like, "Nope." And she's like, "This is her room. You can try and catch her." And so I book it inside and immediately run past everybody, and I'm like, "She's in this room," and start running up the thing. While I'm having this conversation, the rest of the group inside runs into two roadblocks that were set up to like stop people from getting up. One of them is this guy who's just high off his kite, just sitting there smoking Pathfinder weed, basically. And he stopped. He's like sitting on the stairs, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want any?" He's like being all goofy, like talking to them and being like, "Whoa, you're so cool," but obviously like playing it up to like get them to stop.
Be a distraction.
And our bard's like, "Sure, I'll take some," hoping that he'll be like, hoping that he'll get like friendly with him, and that will help him like let us go past, right? He takes one puff and rolls like a 3 on his con save, and immediately gets super high, and is just useless for like the next hour.
Oh no.
The way we finally convince him is our cleric is like, "Yeah, so you've seen I'm a cleric. We're actually here to perform an exorcism up on the 3rd floor. Can you let us pass, please?" And the dude's like, "Yeah, oh God, yeah." He's like, he like immediately gets out of her way because she rolled really good on like a deception check, and so he freaks out thinking we're actually there to get a demon out of the building.
Oh my gosh.
We get up to the next floor. She's all the way on the 3rd floor. So we get to the 2nd floor, and there's a group of performers all sitting on the steps blocking the way. And they're like sitting there performing and like not listening to us and being like, "Why do you want to go? Like, what are you talking about?" Just blocking us off.
Yeah.
And eventually we push past them too. And we finally get up to the next floor. We go to her room. It's kind of barred from one side, like she put a chair up against it. So our barbarian breaks it open into this one little room. We step inside. The window's open, but there's a woman lying on the bed.
Oh, no.
And so we all go over to the bed. We check it out. Everything seems fine about them. We can see them breathing. In like the 5 seconds, split 5 seconds that we all walk into the room, I glance out the window, and I roll pretty decent on a perception check, and Dip says, "You see the woman that's lying in the bed sneaking off across the rooftops." And I was like, that's not her. And I hop out the window. And as soon as I do that, the illusion that was her on the bed goes and dies off.
Oh,
and so
that's
everyone
cool.
else follows us out.
That's cool.
So that's where the chase starts.
Bum, bum, bum.
It was really, really, really fun. This chase was really interesting. So we did it by Pathfinder rules. So the way it works is there's like 15 cards, they're called. And basically, if you run this at the table, you will actually put out cards on the table, like playing cards. And each card face pertains to a different obstacle along the chase, right? So the card faces all are different obstacles. Each one is assigned at the beginning. The DM or GM will tell you what each face means, so you know what. So essentially, like when you get from card 1 to card 2, he says, okay, this card is this. And it requires one of 2 checks. So each card has 2 checks that can be used to pass it. Usually one check will be a lower DC than the other. But if you're really bad at the one check that's a low DC, sometimes it's better to try the other check if you're better at it.
That's cool. So it almost had some randomization to
so we're
the
like
skill check.
We're running across the rooftops basically. So most of them are acrobatics or athletics. But every once in a while there'd be one that's like, okay, now you can roll perception or athletics. The perception is to see the path that you're supposed to go through these like walls and stuff. And athletics is you just book a straight line and you just break through stuff, right? And then sometimes there'd be ones that like, okay, you get swarmed by these creatures. You can roll an animal handling check to like die them down and let you through, or you can roll like an acrobatics check to try and avoid them as you're going through. So every once in a while, it would give you an alternative to the physical check, which was great because we have 2 wizards.
Yay!
So,
any of you guys have hold person?
No, we're way too low level for that.
Still. No second level spell slots, huh?
Actually, Kit might have had one, but I did not, because technically I'm only first level wizard so far.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
At this point. So, this went terribly. And long story short, she got away.
Oh, dude, she got away.
Yeah, so the way it worked was there's 15 cards. If at any point she is 10 cards or more away from you, she wins. She gets away. Or if she gets to card 15 and succeeds, she gets away.
It sounds to me like you guys, your really good rolls were getting to there.
Yes.
And then
absolutely.
Right when the skill happens, you had to like, no.
Dude, this chase in real time lasted like 2.5 hours.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It was intense.
In game, I imagine it was pretty quick, but for you guys that run the table, is that what you're talking about?
Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
It was intense and fun the whole time, which I was surprised by. I was like, "Oh God, we did that for 2 hours," but it was really fun because basically it's basically combat, but much faster because you're going to one person. It's like you know what check you have to make it. You didn't succeed. Go to the next person. Like
so that's cool.
Very quick. Okay. So if we all knew what we were doing at that point, and there were like maybe 1 or 2 less of us, it would have taken maybe an hour tops to get through the whole fight.
Okay.
Whole thing.
No, that makes sense.
And also the fact that it did have to get all the way to the end of her leaving, it would never normally take anywhere near that long.
Gotcha. Okay.
The only one who ever even got close to catching her was our barbarian because he was just breaking through everything, just rolling athletics back and forth and breaking through everything. And he actually even got one chance to grapple her, and she succeeded her check to get out of it.
Oh no.
And then got ahead of him, and then from that point on, he was rolling awful. Our bard caught up to her, but he was so high that he just thought we were all racing. So he just kept going past her.
Oh no. Oh dude. Oh
so, no. All in all, it was hilarious and really funny, and also terrible because we failed, and we all felt terrible because we're trying to save this woman and she got away from us. So we all accept our defeat. We let the guard captain know we failed this thing, and then we get 2 days of off time to, like, we can try and find her. We can do whatever we want to do. And we just finished those 2 days of time, and we were approached by a guard that basically said, hey, she's been found. But thankfully, it was by the Hell Knights. So they are trying to see law done. She's been brought back to the palace. Cressida Croft is going to meet them there. We'll see what happens. And that's where we left off.
Oh, dude. Oh, I think that's why I love Dungeons and Dragons and why the dice are so interesting. They kind of, in a way, tell their own story, and I love that. I love that. I don't know. I think sometimes we all just kind of get in our heads like, well, if I failed the chase, then we have to restart. And I love the fact that you can fail, but how do you go about trying to fix it, right?
Well, and so I'm going to leave something at the end here. Last we left off also, Cal had some drugs in his possession that he was trying to keep and, convince himself he didn't need them, but, like, give himself the opportunity to fail because that's what's important to him, right?
He was arguing with his sister about that, yeah.
Right, so he still had them. After we failed this, he fell into a bit of a pit.
Oh, no.
And ended up taking them taking the drugs on the last day before the end of our downtime after the failure.
Oh, no.
So next time we'll talk about how that ended up too.
Okay. I look forward to that. Now, do you do saves for that? Does Dip make you do saves in order to withstand it, or was that role play?
He doesn't make me. I tend to kind of decide whether he's struggling with it that night or not, and then roll a check, and then roll a save. And I'll roll like a wisdom save to see if he kind of, because I don't want it to just be like, what's best for him, in my mind. I want there to be a little bit of chance to it. Like this night, my thoughts really just get the better of me, and I just can't deal with it.
Well, and sometimes that's how addiction works too. Is that sometimes it your will
and
doesn't withstand.
And the trigger for it was like that feeling of failure. He felt like nothing's been going good for him for a little while now. And he just needed to feel something good. He just needed some hope.
Oof.
He needed some good dreams. So he took it. So we'll talk about how that ended up too last time.
We could definitely talk about that for sure. I love the story. Thank you, Kurtis. You guys are a crazy lot.
Yeah.
A high bard and a cleric doing an exorcism. That's great.
Yeah. That was so good. She did such a good job with that role play. It was so funny watching this high dude like freak out, going like, go. It was so funny.
Good stuff. Well, thank you all so much for joining the Backyard Tabletop, where me and my good buddy just sit around and talk Dungeons and Dragons and talk about our stories. If you like what we do here, leave a like, follow us, do the stuff, and because we come out with these every other Monday. So thank you so much. My name has been Jacob.
My name's been Kurtis, and I don't have anything funny to say this time, really.
Well,
you win some, you lose some.
We'll see you next time. Thank you again, everybody.